Chapter 4. The Revelation. Alpha Marcus's office was exactly how Mira remembered it. All dark wood and leather chairs, packed trophies lining the walls like a hunter's museum. She'd been in this room exactly once before, 3 months ago, when she'd requested permission to live in the Borderlands after Garrett's rejection. Marcus had granted it with the enthusiasm of someone approving a dental procedure. Now she sat in one of those leather chairs like she had every right to be there. Kael beside her, while Marcus shuffled papers and tried to figure out how to navigate this new political reality. The celebration will last 3 days, Marcus explained, directing his comments to Kael and carefully avoiding eye contact with Mira. The first night is the formal dinner, which you've arrived in time for, thankfully. Tomorrow is the traditional hunt, and the final night is the frost moon ceremony itself. We'll be honored to participate, Kael said smoothly. Mira has told me much about Silverpine traditions. This was a lie. Mira had told him almost nothing, mostly because talking about her old pack was about as appealing as chewing glass. But Marcus didn't need to know that. Has she? Marcus's expression suggested he found this highly doubtful. Well, I'm sure she's been settling in well at Shadow Peak. She's been magnificent, Kael said, and the pride in his voice sounded so genuine that Mira almost believed it herself. The court adores her. This was a generous interpretation of the court tolerates her existence and occasionally forgets to exclude her from important decisions. But again, Marcus didn't need to know that. I must admit, Marcus said, leaning back in his chair, your choice of mate has surprised many of us, Your Majesty. An Omega and one from our pack no less. It's certainly unprecedented. I don't choose my mates based on precedent, Kael replied, his tone cooling several degrees. I choose based on worth. And Mira has proven herself worthy 1,000 times over. Of course. I meant no disrespect. Marcus held up his hands placatingly. It's just that Mira's previous situation was well known. The rejected bond with Beta Garrett. Some might question. Let me be very clear, Kael interrupted, and the power in his voice made Mira's wolf whimper in submission. Even Marcus flinched. I don't care about Mira's previous situation. I don't care what Beta Garrett thought he was doing when he rejected his fated mate. And I certainly don't care what some might question. Mira is mine now, under my protection, and anyone who questions my choice is questioning me. Is that understood? Perfectly, Your Majesty. Good. Kael stood, offering his hand to Mira. We should prepare for dinner. I assume accommodations have been arranged. Yes. The guest house has been prepared for your use. I'll have someone show you. That won't be necessary. Mira knows the way. They left Marcus's office, and Mira didn't speak until they were well out of earshot. You didn't have to go full Alpha King on him. I can handle people questioning our relationship. I know you can. But you shouldn't have to. Kael's jaw was tight. The disrespect he showed you, the way he couldn't even look at you. It's unacceptable. He's an Alpha. I'm an Omega. That's just how it is. It's how it's been. It's not how it has to be. He stopped walking, turning to face her. Do you know why I really agreed to this arrangement? Because you owed me a life debt? No. I mean, yes, but that's not the whole truth. He ran a hand through his hair. A gesture of frustration she'd learned meant he was working through something difficult. I've been trying to change the pack hierarchy for years. Trying to prove that rank at birth doesn't determine worth. But every attempt has been met with resistance from traditionalists who benefit from the current system. Then you showed up. An Omega who saved an Alpha King's life. And I saw an opportunity. Mira felt something cold settle in her stomach. So I'm what? A political statement? A symbol to prove your point? No, that's not. Kael stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. You were supposed to be. First. But then I got to know you and you weren't what I expected. You weren't grateful or submissive or trying to use me for status. You were angry and hurt and honest, and you challenged me at every turn. You made me laugh. You made me think. You made me want to be better than the king I've been. Kael. I'm saying this badly. What I mean is, yes, having an Omega mate helps my political goals. But that stopped being the reason I wanted this to work about 2 weeks ago. And now I'm standing here in your old pack territory, watching people look at you like you're nothing. And all I want to do is challenge every single one of them to ritual combat until they understand what I've known since I woke up on your kitchen table. That you're extraordinary. Mira's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. This is supposed to be fake. I know. We have an agreement. 3 months. A business arrangement. I know. So why are you saying things that make it sound real? Kael stepped closer and Mira's breath caught. Maybe because somewhere between you calling me out for having a disaster of a leadership structure and sharing a bed last night without it being weird, I forgot we were pretending. We shared a bed because there was only one bed. We could have asked for another room. That would have been suspicious. Mira. His hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone. We fell asleep wrapped around each other. You had your head on my chest. I woke up with your hair in my face and your hand over my heart. And my first thought wasn't this is inconvenient for our fake relationship. It was I could wake up like this every day for the rest of my life and die happy. You can't say things like that. Why not? Because. Mira pulled away, her mind spinning. Because I was rejected 3 months ago. Because my mate bond broke and it hurt so badly I thought I might actually die from it. Because I don't know if what I'm feeling right now is real, or if I'm just desperate for anyone to want me. Because you're the Alpha King and I'm a nobody Omega, and this is absolutely insane. You're not a nobody. To everyone here I am. Do you know what it's like walking through this pack and seeing people who used to at least acknowledge my existence now look through me like I'm a ghost? Do you know what it felt like to watch Garrett choose someone else, someone better, someone more worthy, while I stood there trying not to fall apart? Tears were burning at the back of her eyes now, and she hated it. I can't do this again. I can't let myself feel something real and have it ripped away. I'm not him. I know you're not. That's what makes this so terrifying. Kael looked like he wanted to argue, to press the point, but instead he just nodded slowly. Okay. We'll keep this fake. Professional. Just like we agreed. Thank you. But Mira. Yeah. When this is over, when the 3 months are up and you've gotten your revenge and we're both free of this arrangement, I'm going to ask you on a real date. No political motivations. No life debts. Just me and you figuring out if this thing between us is as real as it feels. Before Mira could respond, voices echoed down the path toward them. A group of pack members was approaching, Garrett and Serafina among them. Perfect. Absolutely perfect timing. There you are. Serafina called out, her voice saccharine sweet. We've been looking everywhere for you. Some of us thought we'd show the Alpha King around the territory before dinner. I'm sure Mira hasn't had the chance to keep up with all the improvements we've made. The we in that sentence was doing a lot of heavy lifting and everyone knew it. That's very kind, Kael said, his arm sliding around Mira's waist in a gesture that looked protective and possessive. But I think we'll settle in first. It's been a long journey. Of course. Garrett spoke for the first time, and Mira hated that his voice still sent a spike of pain through her chest. Mira, could I speak with you for a moment? Privately. No, Kael said immediately. It's fine, Mira said, even though it absolutely wasn't fine. But she needed to do this. Needed to face Garrett without Kael there as a shield. Just for a moment. She could feel Kael's reluctance, but he nodded. I'll be right here. Garrett led her a short distance away, far enough for privacy but close enough that Kael could intervene if needed. They stood in awkward silence for a moment before Garrett finally spoke. I didn't believe it when I heard the rumors, he said. Mira Ashwood made it to the Alpha King. It seemed impossible. And yet here we are. How did this happen? How did you even meet him? I saved his life. He owed me a debt. We fell in love. It's a very romantic story. The lies came easily, smoothed by practice and motivated by spite. Garrett's expression twisted into something ugly. You expect me to believe the Alpha King fell in love with you? With an Omega? Why is that so hard to believe? You felt the mate bond with me. The moon goddess chose me for you. Maybe she knew something you didn't. The moon goddess makes mistakes. The words hit like a physical blow, even though Mira had heard similar sentiments before. Is that what you tell yourself? That our bond was a mistake? What else could it be? You have no status, no connections, no value to a beta trying to advance his position. Serafina offers everything you couldn't. And yet you're here, asking me how I ended up with someone better than you ever were. Garrett's eyes flashed with anger. Better? He's using you, Mira. Can't you see that? You're a political statement, a way for him to make himself look progressive and open-minded. The moment you stop being useful, he'll discard you just like you did? Mira finished. At least Kael was honest about what he wanted from the start. You pretended to care, pretended the bond meant something, right up until the moment it was inconvenient for your ambitions. I did what was necessary for my future. And I did what was necessary for mine. The difference is my future looks a lot brighter than yours right now. She turned to walk away, but Garrett grabbed her arm. Wait, Mira, I know I hurt you. I know the rejection was painful, but you have to understand it wasn't personal. It was just politics. Not personal. Mira yanked her arm free. You rejected our mate bond in front of the entire pack. You humiliated me. You made me feel worthless. And you want to stand here and tell me it wasn't personal? I thought you'd understand eventually. Thought you'd see it was for the best. For the best? Garrett, you broke something inside me. The mate bond snapping, do you have any idea what that feels like? Like having your soul torn in half. I spent weeks barely able to function, and you were off playing happy families with Serafina. For the first time, Garrett looked uncomfortable. I didn't know it would be that bad. You didn't care to find out. That's not fair. No, what's not fair is you standing here trying to warn me about Kael using me when you did exactly that. At least Kael treats me with respect. At least he makes me feel like I matter. Can you say you ever did that? Garrett had no answer for that. I need to go, Mira said. Kael is waiting, and unlike some people, I don't keep my mate waiting. She walked back to where Kael stood, and the relief on his face when he saw her was so genuine it made her chest ache. Are you okay? He asked quietly. No. But I will be. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Let's go to the guest house. I need a break from being emotionally eviscerated before dinner. They walked together, and Mira didn't look back at Garrett. Didn't give him the satisfaction of knowing his words had landed. But they had. They'd landed hard. Because what if Garrett was right? What if this was all just political theater? And the moment it stopped being useful, Kael would let her go just as easily. The guest house was charming in that deliberate way that suggested someone had tried very hard to make it welcoming for important visitors. Mira barely noticed the decor, too lost in her own spiraling thoughts. Tell me what he said, Kael demanded once they were alone. The usual. That you're using me. That I'm naive. That the moon goddess made a mistake making us mates. She laughed, but it came out bitter. He's probably right about some of it. He's right about none of it. Kael turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. Mira, look at me. Really look at me. She did, and what she saw in his eyes made her breath catch. I'm not using you, he said fiercely. Or rather, maybe I was at first, but that's not what this is anymore. You're not a political statement or a convenient arrangement or any of the things he tried to make you believe. You're... He stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. You're the first person in years who's treated me like I'm more than just a crown and a title. You challenge me and argue with me and make me laugh. And somewhere along the way, this stopped being about politics and started being about you. Kael. I know we agreed to keep this fake. I know you're not ready to trust someone again after what he did to you. But I need you to know when I hold your hand, when I put my arm around you, when I defend you to the court, that's not me playing a role. That's me being honest for the first time in longer than I can remember. Mira felt tears sliding down her cheeks and didn't bother to wipe them away. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to trust someone again. Then don't trust me yet. Just give me the chance to earn it. He brushed away her tears with gentle fingers. We still have 3 months. Let me spend them showing you that not everyone is like him. Before Mira could respond, before she could think about what she was doing, she pushed up on her toes and kissed him. It was brief, barely more than a press of lips, but it felt like something monumental, like crossing a line they couldn't uncross. When she pulled back, Kael was staring at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What was that for? He asked softly. I don't know. Practice? We should probably look convincing when we kiss in public. Right. Practice. But he was smiling now, a real smile that transformed his entire face. Should we practice more? You know, for authenticity. That's a terrible line. I know. But is it working? Despite everything, despite Garrett and the fear and the uncertainty, Mira laughed. Maybe a little. Then I'll take it. They had hours before dinner. Hours to prepare themselves for another performance. Another night of pretending and politics. But for just a moment, standing in the guest house with Kael's arms around her and the taste of his lips still on hers, Mira let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, this could become something real. Chapter 5: The Hunt. The formal dinner had been exactly as excruciating as Mira had anticipated. 3 hours of pointed questions, and barely concealed judgment, wrapped in a veneer of politeness. But she'd survived it, mostly by imagining increasingly creative ways to escape the table. Fake choking? Sudden onset amnesia? Spontaneous combustion? While Kael deflected the most invasive inquiries with political finesse that bordered on art. Now, standing at the edge of the forest as the pack prepared for the traditional hunt, Mira was facing a different kind of challenge. I can't participate, she told Kael for the third time. Omegas don't hunt. We stay back and prepare the feast. That's how it works. That's how it worked, Kael corrected. You're my mate now. You hunt with me. I'll embarrass you. I'll embarrass myself. I haven't hunted with a pack since I was 16, and even then I was terrible at it. Then you'll be terrible at it with me by your side. He was already stripping off his shirt, preparing to shift, and Mira forced herself not to stare at his chest like a teenager with a crush. Besides, I've seen you take down a fully grown Alpha King with nothing but determination and spite. A deer should be easy. The Alpha King was bleeding out and half dead. The deer will be running away at full speed. Details. Other pack members were gathering, and Mira could feel their eyes on her. Garrett and Serafina were among them, both already shifted into their wolf forms. Garrett a large brown wolf with beta markings, Serafina sleek and silver and annoyingly graceful. Marcus, in his alpha form, let out a howl that signaled the hunt was beginning. Wolves streamed into the forest, excited yips and howls echoing through the trees. Come on, Kael said, and then he was shifting, a transformation so smooth it looked effortless. His wolf was magnificent, larger than any she'd ever seen, with fur black as midnight and those same gold eyes that seemed to see straight through her. Mira's own shift was less elegant. It took her longer, and when she finally stood on 4 legs instead of 2, her wolf form was small. Omega small, barely reaching Kael's shoulder. His wolf huffed, and she swore it sounded amused. Don't laugh at me, she thought at him, even though pack bonds didn't work that way with chosen mates. Only fated mates could speak mind to mind in wolf form. But Kael's wolf bumped against her gently, then took off into the forest at an easy lope she could match. The forest was alive with sounds, the crash of wolves pursuing prey, the snap of branches, the thunder of hooves as deer scattered. Mira's wolf instincts kicked in, her senses sharpening, and despite her reservations, she felt a thrill of excitement. They'd been running for maybe 20 minutes when Kael's wolf suddenly went still, his attention fixed on something ahead. Mira crept up beside him and caught the scent, deer close by, separated from its herd. Kael looked at her, and somehow she understood. Your kill. I'll help but you lead. Terror and excitement warred in her chest. She'd never led a hunt before. Omegas didn't lead. They followed, supported, stayed back. But she wasn't just an Omega anymore. She was the Alpha King's mate, and people were watching, and this mattered. She crept forward, using the undergrowth for cover, Kael a massive shadow at her side. The deer was young but healthy, grazing in a small clearing. It would be fast. Mira calculated the angles, the distances, the direction the wind was blowing. Then she launched herself forward. The deer bolted immediately, faster than she'd anticipated. Mira's smaller size actually helped here. She could dodge through the dense trees more easily, taking shortcuts while the deer was forced to go around obstacles. But it was pulling away. She wasn't fast enough, wasn't strong enough. Kael's wolf appeared on the deer's right flank, herding it back toward Mira. Not making the kill for her, just helping, supporting her hunt. Mira put on a burst of speed she didn't know she had. Her wolf form singing with the thrill of the chase. When the deer stumbled slightly over a root, she was there. The kill was quick, clean, respectful. Mira stood over her prey, panting, and felt a surge of pride so intense it was almost overwhelming. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Other wolves had gathered, drawn by the commotion. She could feel their surprise, their reassessment. An omega making a clean kill on her first hunt in years. Kael's wolf pressed against her side, radiating pride and approval, and Mira felt something warm settle in her chest. Then Garrett's wolf stepped into the clearing, and the moment shattered. He was staring at her kill, at Kael beside her, and even in wolf form his hostility was palpable. His lips pulled back in a snarl, a clear challenge. Kael moved instantly, putting himself between Mira and Garrett, his own snarl making several nearby wolves back up instinctively. The message was clear. Touch her and die. For a long moment, the two wolves faced each other, and Mira's heart hammered with the certainty that this was about to turn violent. Then Alpha Marcus's wolf appeared, shoving himself between them with a growl that meant stand down. Garrett held the position a moment longer, then retreated, but not before giving Mira one last look that promised this wasn't over. The rest of the hunt passed without incident, but the joy had been leached from it. By the time they returned to pack grounds with their kills, Mira was exhausted and emotionally wrung out. She shifted back to human form behind the cover of trees, yanking on the clothes she'd left there. When she emerged, Kael was waiting, already dressed, his expression stormy. "We need to talk about what happened." "Later," Mira interrupted. I just need a minute to breathe." She escaped to the guest house, closing herself in the bathroom and turning on the shower to drown out the world. She stood under the hot water until it ran cold, trying to wash away the feeling of Garrett's hostility, the weight of dozens of judgmental stares. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel, Kael was sitting on the edge of the bed looking like he was contemplating murder. "He challenged you," Kael said without preamble. "In wolf form in front of witnesses. That was a direct challenge to your status. He was upset I made a kill. Omegas aren't supposed to." "Stop." Kael stood, crossing to her in 3 strides. "Stop diminishing what you accomplished. You made a clean kill on your first hunt in years. You should be celebrated, not challenged by a bitter ex-mate who can't stand seeing you succeed." "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me." The outburst surprised them both. Kael ran a hand through his hair, clearly trying to calm himself. "Sorry. Watching him challenge you, seeing the way the pack looked at you like you'd done something wrong by being competent, it made me want to challenge him to ritual combat and end this." Mira's stomach dropped. "You can't do that. I'm the Alpha King. I can do whatever I want." "No, you can't. Not without starting a political nightmare. If you challenge Garrett, it looks like I can't fight my own battles. It undermines everything we're trying to prove about Omegas being strong enough to stand on their own. You shouldn't have to stand alone against someone who rejected you." "Maybe not. But I need to." Mira tightened the towel around herself, wishing she was dressed for this conversation. "Kael, if you step in every time someone questions me, I become the Omega who hides behind her powerful mate. I become exactly what they think I am, weak and dependent. Is that what you want?" "I want you protected. I want to protect myself. I need to protect myself or this." She gestured between them. "All of this is meaningless. I'm just trading one mate who saw me as worthless for another who sees me as fragile." "I don't see you as fragile." "Then prove it. Let me handle Garrett my way." Kael looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he nodded. "Fine. But I reserve the right to step in if he crosses a line." "Deal." They stared at each other for a long moment, and Mira became acutely aware that she was standing in nothing but a towel while having an intense conversation with a male she maybe had feelings for but was definitely not supposed to have feelings for because this was supposed to be fake. "I should get dressed," she said. "Right. Yes. I'll just." Kael headed for the door then stopped. "Mira." "Yeah. That kill today? It was impressive. Really impressive. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." He left before she could respond, and Mira sank onto the bed, her emotions a tangled mess. The Frost Moon ceremony was that night, and she needed to pull herself together. Needed to be the Alpha King's mate, confident and strong and absolutely not falling apart over an ex who didn't deserve a second of her mental energy. She could do this. She'd survived worse. Probably. The ceremony began at moonrise. The entire pack gathered in a massive clearing, the full moon hanging overhead like a silver coin. There would be rituals, blessings, pack bonding activities, all the traditional elements that made the frost moon sacred. Mira stood at Kael's side, wearing a dress Clara had insisted was perfect for a queen at a pack ceremony. It was deep blue, the color of midnight, and made Mira feel like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Alpha Marcus began the ceremony with traditional words, calling on the moon goddess to bless the pack. Then came the individual blessings, pack members stepping forward to receive Marcus's acknowledgement of their achievements over the past year. Garrett was called forward along with Serafina. Marcus praised their union, their contribution to pack strength, their embodiment of traditional values. The words stung, even though Mira had expected them. Then Marcus did something unexpected. "We have honored guests tonight," he announced. "Alpha King Kael and his mate Mira Ashwood. Mira, would you step forward?" Every instinct screamed at her to refuse, to stay safely at Kael's side. But she felt Kael's hand squeeze hers in encouragement before releasing her. She stepped forward alone, facing the Alpha who'd barely acknowledged her existence for years. "Mira Ashwood," Marcus said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "You were born to this pack, raised in our traditions, but you have risen beyond what any of us anticipated. As the chosen mate of the Alpha King, you represent our pack on the highest stage. What do you say to this honor?" It was a trap. It had to be. If she accepted the honor, she was acknowledging that her worth came from Kael's status. If she refused, she was insulting both Marcus and Kael. Mira took a breath, and then she spoke from her heart. "With respect, Alpha Marcus, my worth doesn't come from being anyone's mate. It comes from surviving rejection and humiliation and still choosing to be kind. It comes from saving a stranger's life because it was the right thing to do, not because I expected anything in return. It comes from standing here tonight, in front of a pack that never saw me as anything more than an omega, and refusing to let your limitations define me." The silence was absolute. "I don't represent this pack," Mira continued, her voice stronger now. "I represent everyone who's been told they're not enough because of their rank or their birth or their circumstances. And if being the Alpha King's mate gives me a platform to prove that worth isn't determined by hierarchy, then I'll accept that honor. But not because you've decided I deserve it now that I'm useful. I'll accept it because I've always deserved it, and I'm done waiting for permission to believe that." Someone in the crowd started clapping, then another, then more until nearly half the pack was applauding. The other half looked scandalized. Marcus's expression was unreadable. Then slowly he inclined his head. "Well said, Mira Ashwood. May the moon goddess guide your path." Mira returned to Kael's side, her heart pounding so hard she could barely hear anything else. "That," Kael murmured in her ear, "was magnificent." The ceremony continued, but Mira barely processed it. She just publicly challenged pack hierarchy in front of dozens of witnesses. She'd essentially declared that the old ways were broken and needed to change. Either she'd just made the speech of her life, or she'd committed social suicide. Possibly both. When the formal ceremony ended, pack members mingled, eating and drinking and celebrating under the full moon. Mira was immediately surrounded by wolves, some congratulating her, others clearly wanting to gauge whether she was serious about her revolutionary little speech. She lost track of Kael in the crowd, swept up in conversation with a group of younger Omegas who had stars in their eyes and questions about life at Shadow Peak. "Is it true you have your own seat at the king's table?" one asked. "Is it true you changed pack law to allow Omegas in the guard?" Another chimed in. Mira answered as honestly as she could, trying not to oversell her influence while also not underselling the changes Kael was trying to make. She was mid-sentence about training opportunities when she felt it, that prickling awareness that said someone was watching her with ill intent. She turned to find Serafina approaching, resplendent in silver that matched her wolf form, her smile sharp as a blade. "Quite the speech," Serafina said, her tone making it clear this wasn't a compliment. "Very inspiring. I'm sure all the Omegas are thrilled to have such a vocal representative." "Thank you," Mira said, refusing to take the bait. I wonder though, does the Alpha King know you're using his status to push your own agenda? Or does he think you're genuinely his mate, and not just an Omega with delusions of grandeur? The younger Omegas gasped at the insult. Mira felt her wolf rise up, hackles raised, ready to defend. But before she could respond, a voice cut through the tension. Perhaps you should worry less about my mate's motivations and more about why you feel so threatened by an Omega speaking her truth. Kael had appeared at Mira's side, his presence making several people step back instinctively. He looked at Serafina with the kind of cold assessment that probably preceded executions in the old days. Your Majesty, I meant no disrespect. Yes, you did. You meant a great deal of disrespect to both Mira and to me. But I'll forgive it this once, because clearly you're struggling with the reality that the Omega you helped humiliate 3 months ago is now in a position of power you'll never reach. Serafina's face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Garrett appeared at her side, his expression thunderous. With all due respect, Your Majesty, Garrett said, his voice tight. Perhaps you don't have the full picture of Mira's situation here. She's not exactly what she appears to be. Enlighten me, Kael said, his voice deadly quiet. She was rejected for good reason. She's manipulative, ambitious beyond her station, and clearly willing to use any means necessary to gain status. The fact that she saved your life, don't you think it's convenient? That she just happened to be in the right place at the right time? Are you suggesting my mate orchestrated an assassination attempt against me so she could save my life? Kael's laugh was devoid of humor. That's quite a conspiracy theory. Should I be impressed by her ruthlessness or insulted by your stupidity? I'm saying you should be careful. She's not what she seems. Neither are you, apparently. The beta who rejected his fated mate for political advancement, who now can't stand seeing her successful, who's so bitter about his choices that he'd rather spread lies than admit he made a mistake. Kael's power rolled out, making everyone in the vicinity drop their eyes in submission. Everyone except Mira. Here's what's actually happening. You rejected Mira because you were too much of a coward to challenge pack hierarchy. Now she's done what you couldn't, risen above it, and you can't stand it. So you're lashing out, trying to diminish her accomplishments, because if she's truly extraordinary, it means you gave up something precious for something worthless. Garrett looked like he'd been slapped. Serafina's face was pale. This conversation is over, Kael said. And if I hear even a whisper of you spreading rumors about my mate, I'll consider it a personal insult. And trust me, you don't want to personally insult an Alpha King. He took Mira's hand and led her away from the gathering crowd, away from the ceremony, into the quiet darkness of the forest edge. You okay? He asked once they were alone. I should be asking you that. You just threatened a beta and his mate on their own pack territory. He deserved it. He did. But Kael, Mira stopped, turning to face him. You can't keep defending me like this. You can't keep fighting my battles. Why not? Because what happens in 3 months when you're not here anymore? When this arrangement ends and I'm just Mira again, without the Alpha King at my side. I need to be able to stand on my own. Kael was quiet for a long moment. What if the arrangement doesn't end? What? What if, he said slowly, carefully, we made this real, not fake anymore. Not a business arrangement. Just together. Mira's heart stuttered. You can't mean that. I've never been more serious about anything in my life. Kael, you barely know me. We've known each other for less than a month. It's too fast, it's too. I know you saved my life. I know you challenge me and make me laugh and make me want to be better. I know I wake up disappointed on the mornings when you're not wrapped around me like an octopus. I know that when Garrett challenged you today, my first instinct was to rip his throat out, which is probably not healthy but is definitely how I feel. He stepped closer. I know this started as a fake relationship, but somewhere along the way, it became the realest thing in my life. I'm scared, Mira whispered. I know. I'm scared too. But I'm also sure. About you. About us. What if I can't be what you need? What if I'm not ready for this? Then we take it slow. We date properly. We figure it out together. His hands came up to cup her face. But please don't ask me to walk away in 3 months and pretend this meant nothing. Because it means everything. Mira felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Garrett broke me. The rejection, it broke something inside me. I don't know if I can be whole enough for you. You're not broken. You're healing. There's a difference. Kael's thumbs brushed away her tears. And I'm not asking for whole. I'm asking for honest. Be honest with me about what you feel, what you need, what scares you. That's all I want. I want this to be real, Mira admitted, the words tumbling out before she could stop them. I want to wake up next to you every morning and have it mean something. I want to stop being afraid that you'll realize I'm not worth the trouble. I want to stop waiting for the other shoe to drop and just be happy with you. Then be happy with me. He leaned his forehead against hers. We'll figure out the rest as we go. That's a terrible plan. Very poorly thought out. No structure or strategy. I know. But sometimes the best things aren't planned. Mira laughed through her tears. You're absolutely right, and I hate that. Get used to it. I'm right about a lot of things. Arrogant Alpha King. You're arrogant Alpha King. And then he was kissing her. Really kissing her, not the brief peck they'd shared before. But something deep and consuming and absolutely real. Mira melted into it, into him, her hands fisting in his shirt as 3 months of tension and denial and fear finally broke free. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, Kael smiled. So? Real relationship? Are we doing this? We're doing this, Mira confirmed. But I have conditions. Of course you do. First, we don't tell anyone yet. I want to figure this out without the entire court watching our every move. Second, if this doesn't work, if we realize we're better as friends or allies or whatever, we end it honestly. No faking, no pretending. And third, she poked him in the chest. You let me fight my own battles. Support me, yes. Stand beside me, absolutely. But don't fight for me. Let me be strong on my own terms. Deal. On all counts. He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. Anything else? Yeah. Kiss me again. For practice. Practice, he agreed, grinning. Right. The second kiss was even better than the first, and by the time they returned to the ceremony, disheveled and grinning like idiots, Mira felt lighter than she had in months. This was real. This was happening. And for the first time since Garrett had rejected her, Mira let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, the moon goddess hadn't made a mistake after all. Maybe she'd just been waiting for Mira to find the right person. Chapter 6. The Challenge. The morning after the Frost Moon ceremony, Mira woke to find herself wrapped around Kael again. Except this time, it wasn't an accident or something to be embarrassed about. This time she let herself enjoy it. You're awake, Kael murmured, his voice rough with sleep. How did you know? I didn't move. Your breathing changed. Also, you tensed up like you were about to bolt. I don't bolt. You absolutely bolt. It's one of your signature moves. Something gets too real, too emotional, and you deflect with sarcasm and physically remove yourself from the situation. Mira pulled back enough to glare at him. I'm not that predictable. You're exactly that predictable. It's part of your charm. He tugged her closer. But you're not bolting right now, which I'm taking as a good sign. Don't get used to it. This is a temporary lapse in judgment brought on by the full moon and your unfair attractiveness. My unfair attractiveness? You know what you look like. Don't fish for compliments. Kael laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest where Mira's head was resting. We should probably get up. Today's the final day of the celebration. The pack will expect us at breakfast. Can we skip it? Pretend we're ill? Say we got food poisoning from questionable festival meat. That would be cowardly. I'm comfortable with cowardice if it means avoiding more passive-aggressive questions about our relationship. Mira. Fine. But if Serafina makes one more comment about my station or Garrett tries the whole concerned ex-mate routine, I'm not responsible for what happens. They dressed and headed to the main hall where breakfast was being served. The room fell silent when they entered, dozens of eyes tracking their movement to the table. This is normal, Mira muttered. Just a casual breakfast where everyone stares at us like we're exotic zoo animals. You're the mate of the Alpha King. People will stare. You need to get comfortable with it. I'll get comfortable with it right after I get comfortable with public speaking, heights, and the inevitable heat death of the universe. They sat, and immediately servers rushed forward with food. Mira had just taken a bite of eggs when Alpha Marcus stood, commanding attention. "Before we conclude the Frost Moon celebration," he announced, "there is one final tradition to observe. The Challenge of Worth." Mira's stomach dropped. She knew this tradition, had watched it for years without ever being able to participate. Any pack member could issue a challenge of worth to another, testing their right to hold a certain position or claim a certain honor. "This year," Marcus continued, "we have a challenge issued by Beta Garrett against Mira Ashwood, mate to Alpha King Kael." The room erupted in whispers. Kael was on his feet instantly, power rolling off him in waves. "This is unacceptable. A beta challenging the Alpha King's mate." "The challenge is not against you, Your Majesty," Marcus interrupted smoothly. "It's against Mira's claim to be worthy of her position. The traditions allow for such challenges, even against those of higher station, if the challenger believes worth has not been properly demonstrated." "This is a farce," Kael growled. "This is tradition," Marcus countered. "And I believe your own reforms have emphasized respecting pack traditions while challenging unfair hierarchies. Surely you wouldn't deny Mira the right to defend herself." It was a perfect trap. If Kael interfered, he was a hypocrite who only supported tradition when it benefited him. If he didn't interfere, Mira had to face Garrett alone. Mira stood slowly, her heart pounding. "What are the terms of the challenge?" Garrett stepped forward, and his expression was a mixture of triumph and something darker. 3 trials. Strength, wisdom, and loyalty. If you succeed in all 3, I acknowledge your worth. If you fail even one, you admit you're not fit to be the Alpha King's mate and return to your proper station." "My proper station?" Mira repeated. "You mean as a rejected Omega with no status?" "I mean as someone who knows their place." The rage that flooded through Mira was white-hot and clarifying. This wasn't about her worth. This was about Garrett's ego. About him needing to prove that rejecting her had been the right choice. "I accept," she said, ignoring Kael's sharp intake of breath. "All 3 trials. Today." "Mira," Kael said quietly, urgently, "you don't have to do this." "Yes, I do." She met his eyes, willing him to understand. "If I don't, every challenge to my position will be met with, well, she couldn't even beat her ex-mate in a proper trial. I have to do this." "Then I'm right beside you." "No. This is my challenge. My fight." She softened her voice. "Trust me." Kael looked like he wanted to argue, but finally he nodded. "I trust you. But if he cheats, then you can rip his throat out. Deal." "Deal." The pack moved outside to the training grounds, anticipation electric in the air. Word had spread quickly. Apparently nothing was more entertaining than watching an Omega try to prove she deserved to be queen. "First trial," Alpha Marcus announced. "Strength. Traditional one-on-one combat, wolf form, until submission or yield." Mira's wolf was smaller than Garrett's, weaker by traditional measures. Everyone knew how this would end. Everyone except Mira. She stripped off her dress. Thank the moon goddess Clara had insisted she wear something easy to remove, and shifted. Her wolf was still small, still obviously Omega-ranked, but she'd learned something over the past month at Shadow Peak. Size wasn't everything. Garrett shifted too, his larger brown wolf circling her with confident, lazy movements. He was playing to the crowd, showing how easy this would be. His first mistake. When he lunged, Mira was already moving, using her smaller size to slip under his attack. She went for his legs, not trying to overpower him but to unbalance him. It worked. Sort of. Garrett stumbled but recovered quickly, his jaws snapping at her flank. Mira dodged, but not quite fast enough. Teeth scraped her side, drawing blood. The crowd gasped. Mira ignored the pain and the blood and the small voice in her head screaming that she was outmatched. She'd spent the last month sparring with Kael's guards, wolves who didn't hold back just because she was an Omega. She'd learned to use speed and strategy over brute force. Garrett was stronger, but Mira was smarter. She feinted left, then went right when he bought the fake. Got inside his guard and went for his throat. Not a killing bite, but enough to make him rear back in surprise. They circled each other, both panting now. Garrett's confidence had shifted to wariness. Good. The fight continued, brutal and exhausting. Mira took hits. More than she wanted, her smaller size making her vulnerable to Garrett's power. But she gave as good as she got, using every dirty trick she'd learned, every technique that made up for her lack of raw strength. Finally, when they'd been fighting for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Mira saw her opening. Garrett was favoring his right front leg, an old injury she remembered from a hunt gone wrong years ago. She went for it. Her teeth closed around his leg. Not hard enough to break but hard enough to hurt. Garrett yelped and went down, and Mira was on him instantly, jaws at his throat in the traditional submission hold. Yield or die. For a long moment Garrett didn't move. Then slowly he tapped the ground with his paw 3 times. Yield. The crowd erupted. Mira released him and stepped back, her sides heaving, blood matting her fur. She'd won. She'd actually won. When she shifted back to human form, accepting the robe someone thrust at her, her hands were shaking with adrenaline and disbelief. Kael was there immediately, checking her injuries with gentle hands. You're bleeding. I won. You're bleeding, he repeated more urgently. I won. Mira couldn't help the grin spreading across her face. Did you see that? I actually won. I saw. Kael's expression was torn between pride and concern. You were magnificent. Also reckless. Also bleeding from at least 3 different wounds. Minor details. Marcus stepped forward. The first trial is complete. Mira Ashwood has demonstrated strength. We'll break for 1 hour before the second trial. The hour passed in a blur of medical attention. Kael insisted she see the pack healer, who patched her up while muttering about fool omegas and their death wishes, and preparation for whatever came next. The second trial is wisdom, Clara told her, having appeared from somewhere to help Mira into a fresh dress. Usually it's riddles or strategy puzzles. Something to test mental acuity. I can do riddles. Against Garrett? Who's a beta with years of strategic training? I said I can do riddles, not that I'm confident about it. There's a difference. When they reconvened, Marcus presented the trial. A complex strategy game played on a board with carved pieces representing different pack ranks. The goal was to capture the opponent's alpha piece while protecting your own. It was pack hierarchy made into a game. Garrett moved first, his strategy aggressive and traditional. Send the stronger pieces forward, sacrifice the weaker ones. Mira stared at the board and saw not just a game but a metaphor. This was how pack hierarchy worked. Strong pieces valued, weak pieces expendable. What if she played differently? She started moving her omega pieces, the ones Garrett was clearly expecting her to sacrifice, in unexpected ways. Using them not as fodder, but as strategic assets. Her small, weak pieces created openings for bigger moves, set traps, controlled key positions. Garrett's confidence wavered as his traditional strategy fell apart against her unconventional approach. He'd been trained to see omegas as expendable. Mira was showing him they could be essential. Move by move, she dismantled his position. When she finally captured his alpha piece with a combination that used every single one of her omega pieces working together, the symbolism wasn't lost on anyone watching. Second trial complete, Marcus announced, and he almost sounded impressed. Mira Ashwood has demonstrated wisdom. 2 down. 1 to go. Final trial, Marcus said. Loyalty. This one is unusual. Unusual was an understatement. The trial of loyalty required Mira to choose. Swear absolute loyalty to Silverpine Pack and her alpha, or maintain her loyalty to Kael and Shadow Peak. If she chose Silverpine, she proved her loyalty to her birth pack, but implied she wasn't truly committed to being Kael's mate. If she chose Shadow Peak, she proved her loyalty to Kael, but rejected her birth pack and everything she'd fought for. It was designed to be unwinnable. This is ridiculous, Kael said, his voice dangerously quiet. You're asking her to choose between her mate and her birth pack? What kind of trial is that? A trial of loyalty, Marcus repeated. She must choose where her true allegiance lies. Mira looked at Garrett, at Marcus, at the assembled pack. Then she looked at Kael, who was radiating fury barely held in check. I choose neither, she said. Silence. That's not an option, Garrett said. I'm making it an option. You want to test my loyalty? Here it is. I'm loyal to fairness, to justice, to the idea that wolves shouldn't have to choose between the pack they were born into and the mate they chose. I'm loyal to changing a system that forces impossible choices, and then calls it tradition. She turned to face the entire gathering. My loyalty is to making things better. For Omegas who've been told they're worthless. For pack members who've been forced to sacrifice their fated mates for politics. For anyone who's been hurt by a hierarchy that values power over worth. Her voice rose, carrying across the training grounds. If that means I'm disloyal to tradition, then I'm disloyal. But I won't apologize for it. The silence stretched out, broken finally by a slow clap. It was one of the younger Omegas from the night before. Then another joined in. Then more, until dozens of wolves were applauding. Not all of them, but enough to make a statement. Marcus looked at Garrett. Your challenge. Garrett's face was a mask of barely controlled rage. She didn't answer the question. She refused to choose. That's not completing the trial, that's failing it. Is it? An elderly voice rang out from the crowd, and everyone turned to see Elder Mora stepping forward. She was ancient, one of the oldest wolves in Silverpine, and her word carried weight that even Alpha Marcus couldn't dismiss. I remember when loyalty trials were first established. They were meant to test whether a wolf's heart was true, not to force impossible choices that serve only to maintain power structures. Elder Mora, Marcus said carefully, the traditions are clear. The traditions are what we make of them, Alpha. And this young Omega has shown more loyalty to the true spirit of pack, community, fairness, mutual support, than many who've held higher ranks. Elder Mora's gaze swept the crowd. She answered the question honestly. That takes more courage than simply choosing the politically expedient option. Marcus looked conflicted, clearly torn between tradition and the elder's wisdom. Finally, he turned to Garrett. The challenge was yours to issue. What say you? Has she proven her worth? Garrett looked at Mira with something ugly and complicated in his eyes. No. She's proven she's a rebel and a troublemaker who doesn't respect pack hierarchy. She's proven she'll undermine tradition whenever it suits her. She's proven that she's everything you weren't brave enough to be, Kael interrupted, his voice cutting across Garrett's tirade. He stepped forward, and even without releasing his power, his presence commanded attention. You rejected your fated mate because you were too afraid to stand up to pack expectations. You challenged her worth because you can't stand seeing her succeed where you failed. And now you're refusing to acknowledge what everyone here can see, that she's beaten you in every trial that matters. Your Majesty, with respect, this is pack business. Mira is my mate. That makes it my business. Kael's eyes blazed gold. But I'll let her handle this. Mira. Mira stepped forward, looking Garrett directly in the eyes. I don't need your acknowledgement, Garrett. I don't need you to tell me I'm worthy. I stopped needing anything from you the moment you rejected me and I survived it. But I'll tell you what I've learned since then. She moved closer and Garrett actually took a step back. I've learned that the mate bond breaking didn't destroy me, it freed me. It freed me from being tied to someone who saw me as a liability instead of a gift. It freed me from trying to make myself smaller so you could feel bigger. And it freed me to find someone who actually deserves me. You think the Alpha King deserves you? Garrett sneered. You're delusional. He's using you for politics. Maybe he was. First. Just like I was using him for revenge. But somewhere along the way we both realized something you'll never understand. That real partnership isn't about rank or status or political advantage. It's about two people choosing each other every day. Even when it's hard. Even when it challenges everything they thought they knew. Mira turned to address the crowd. I came back here wanting to prove something to all of you. Wanting to show you that rejecting me was a mistake, that I was worth more than you believed. But I don't need to prove that anymore. Your opinion of me doesn't define my worth. My worth exists whether you acknowledge it or not. She looked back at Garrett one last time. So keep your acknowledgement. Keep your challenge and your trials and your bitter need to tear down anyone who threatens your fragile ego. I don't need any of it. I know who I am and that's enough. The silence that followed was profound. Then Elder Mora began to clap. It started slow, deliberate, and then others joined, the younger wolves first, then more, until over half the pack was applauding. Alpha Marcus raised his hand for silence. The challenge of worth is concluded. Mira Ashwood has demonstrated strength, wisdom, and loyalty. Perhaps not in the traditional ways, but in ways that matter nonetheless. I declare the challenge met. No. Garrett's shout was almost a howl. This isn't over. I invoke right of blood challenge. The crowd gasped. Blood challenge was ancient, rarely used and deadly serious. It meant ritual combat to the death, or near death, if the challenger showed mercy. You can't, Serafina said, grabbing Garrett's arm. Garrett, this is insane. I can and I will. Garrett shook her off, his eyes wild. She's made a mockery of everything we believe in. Someone has to put her back in her place. Your place, Kael said, his voice deadly quiet, is about to be 6 feet under if you proceed with this. You can't fight for her. Blood challenge must be answered by the challenged party. I know the rules. Kael turned to Mira, and his expression was anguished. Mira, you don't have to accept this. We can leave right now. Renounce your Silverpine membership and spend the rest of my life knowing I ran? Mira shook her head. No. I accept the blood challenge. Mira. I accept, she repeated louder. Name the time and terms, Garrett. Now. Here. Wolf form. First blood or submission. Garrett was already stripping off his shirt. No one interferes no matter what happens. Kael grabbed Mira's arm, pulling her aside. Don't do this. Please. He's stronger than you, and he's not thinking clearly. He could actually hurt you. He's already hurt me. The worst he could do, he's already done. Mira touched Kael's face gently. I need to do this. I need to face him and prove to myself, not to anyone else, that I'm strong enough to stand on my own. You've already proven that. Then this is just cleanup. She tried to smile, but her hands were shaking. Trust me. I trust you. I just don't trust him. Kael pulled her into a fierce embrace. Be smart. Be fast. And if he crosses a line, I'm ending this, consequences be damned. Deal. Mira stripped down and shifted, her smaller Omega Wolf facing Garrett's larger Beta form. She was already tired from the earlier fight, her injuries not fully healed. But she was also angry, furious at Garrett for making this necessary, at herself for ever believing he was worth her love, at a system that forced her to fight for basic respect. She channeled that anger into focus. Garrett circled her, and this time there was no showboating, no playing to the crowd. This was serious. Dangerous. He lunged without warning, and Mira barely dodged in time. His teeth caught her shoulder, tearing through fur and skin. Pain blazed through her, but she twisted away, retaliating with a snap at his legs. They crashed together in a tangle of fur and teeth and snarls. Mira was faster, but Garrett was stronger. Every hit he landed drove the breath from her lungs. Every dodge cost her energy she couldn't spare. Blood matted both their coats now, more of it hers than his. I can't win this, Mira realized with cold clarity. Not with strength. Not with speed. He's too strong and I'm too hurt. She needed to be smarter. Garrett came at her again, and instead of dodging, Mira did something unexpected. She went to meet him head-on. His momentum plus her forward motion meant they collided with twice the force, and both went down in a heap. But Mira had been ready for it. She'd positioned herself so the fall put her on top, jaws at his throat. Garrett thrashed, trying to throw her off, and he was strong enough that it almost worked. Mira's teeth broke skin, drawing the first blood. The fight was over. Except Garrett didn't stop. Blinded by rage or pride or something darker, he twisted violently, and Mira felt her grip slip. His jaws found her throat, and suddenly she was the one pinned. His teeth pressing against the vulnerable hollow where her pulse beat frantically. This is it, she thought with strange calm. He's going to kill me. Then Garrett was flying through the air, ripped away from her by a force of pure fury. Kael's wolf, massive and black and absolutely terrifying, stood over Mira's fallen form, his snarl promising death to anyone who came closer. He'd shifted so fast she hadn't even seen it happen. The challenge is over. Elder Mora's voice rang out. First blood was drawn. Garrett violated the terms by continuing. But Garrett, in his shifted form and consumed by whatever madness had taken hold, lunged at Kael. It was over in seconds. Kael's wolf met Garrett's attack with brutal efficiency, using strength and skill honed from years of combat training. Within moments, Garrett was on the ground, Kael's jaws locked around his throat in a killing hold. Kael, no. Mira shifted back to human form despite her injuries, stumbling forward. Don't kill him. Please. Kael's wolf looked at her, and she saw the struggle in those gold eyes, the desire for vengeance warring with his respect for her wishes. He's not worth it, Mira said softly. He's not worth becoming a killer over. Please. Slowly, Kael released Garrett and stepped back, shifting to human form. Someone threw him pants, which he pulled on without taking his eyes off Garrett's prone form. Get him out of my sight, Kael ordered, his voice still rough with fury. And someone get a healer for Mira. Now. The pack scrambled to obey. Garrett was carried away, still in wolf form, blood streaming from the wounds Kael had inflicted. Serafina followed, her face pale and shocked. Mira's legs gave out, and Kael caught her before she hit the ground. I've got you, he murmured, cradling her against his chest. You're okay. You're safe. I won, Mira mumbled, suddenly exhausted beyond measure. The first blood was mine. I won the challenge. You won everything, Kael said, and there was something fierce and proud in his voice. You magnificent, terrifying, absolutely reckless woman. The healer appeared, the same one who'd patched Mira up earlier, now looking distinctly unamused about having to do it again. You need to stop getting into fights, Omega. This is not sustainable. Noted, Mira said, then winced as the healer began cleaning her wounds. Ow, that hurts. Good. Maybe you'll remember that before you accept the next blood challenge. But the healer's hands were gentle despite her stern words. You'll heal. Everything's superficial except the shoulder bite. That'll need stitches. How many stitches? Enough that you'll have a scar to remember this day by. Perfect. I'll tell people it's from fighting a bear. You'll tell people it's from being stubborn, Kael corrected. But his hand was stroking her hair with a tenderness that belied his annoyed tone. By the time the healer finished, Mira was stitched, bandaged, and thoroughly lectured on the importance of avoiding mortal combat whenever possible. The crowd had dispersed, the drama of the day apparently concluded. Alpha Marcus approached as they were preparing to leave, his expression unreadable. That was quite the display, he said. Are you here to issue another challenge? Mira asked wearily. Because I'm fresh out of willingness to prove myself today. No. I'm here to apologize. Marcus's words surprised her. I allowed that challenge to proceed when I should have stopped it. Garrett was acting out of wounded pride, not genuine concern for pack welfare. And I used your challenge, to test whether Alpha King Kael's reforms were genuine or just political theater. And, Kael asked, his voice cool. And you both proved they're genuine. More importantly, you proved that the old ways of determining worth are broken. Marcus looked at Mira directly for the first time since she'd returned. You were always worthy, Mira Ashwood. I apologize for not seeing it sooner. I don't need your apology, Mira said, echoing her earlier words to Garrett. But I accept it anyway. Because holding grudges is exhausting, and I'm too tired to be petty right now. Marcus actually smiled. Well said. Will you be returning to Shadow Peak? Yes, Kael answered before Mira could. And we'll be leaving tonight. This visit has been enlightening, but I think we've had enough of Silverpine hospitality. Understood. Travel safely, Your Majesty. And Mira, Marcus hesitated then continued. You're always welcome here. Not as an Omega who knows her place, but as the mate of the Alpha King and a wolf who's earned respect. That's a standing invitation. After Marcus left, Kael helped Mira back to the guest house. She was moving slowly, every muscle screaming in protest, her shoulder throbbing despite the painkillers the healer had provided. You, Kael said as he carefully helped her out of her blood-stained clothes, are never doing anything like that again. I can't promise that. I have poor impulse control and a tendency toward dramatic gestures. Then I'll just have to be there every time, ready to catch you when you inevitably get yourself hurt. That's very romantic. Also slightly condescending, but mostly romantic. Kael pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. You scared me today. When he had you pinned, when his teeth were at your throat. His voice cracked. I thought I was going to lose you. You didn't lose me. I'm right here. I know. But Mira. He pulled back to look at her seriously. If we're doing this, if we're making this relationship real, you have to promise me something. What? Stop accepting blood challenges from unstable ex-mates. Despite everything, Mira laughed. That's a very specific request. I'm a very specific person. Do you promise? I promise to try very hard not to accept blood challenges from unstable ex-mates. That's the best I can offer. I'll take it. Kael helped her into clean, soft clothes, then settled her on the bed. Rest. We'll leave in a few hours once you've had time to heal a bit more. Stay with me? Mira asked, suddenly not wanting to be alone. Always. He climbed onto the bed beside her, carefully arranging her against his chest so he didn't aggravate her injuries. Mira closed her eyes, breathing in his scent, pine and winter frost and safety. Kael. Thank you for intervening when you did. I know I said I wanted to fight my own battles, but he violated the terms of the challenge, and I wasn't about to let him kill you. That's not interfering with your independence. That's me refusing to watch someone I love get murdered. Mira's eyes flew open. Someone you love? Kael tensed. I meant. Do you love me? Mira asked, her heart pounding. I don't know, Kael admitted. Maybe. Probably. It's only been a month and I don't want to presume, but... He stopped, then started again. Yes. Think I do. I think I've been falling in love with you since you called me out for having a disaster of a leadership structure while I was bleeding out on the forest floor. That's a weird moment to fall in love. You're a weird person. It fits. Mira was quiet for a long moment processing this. Then, I think I might love you too. Which is terrifying and probably premature, and definitely not something I planned for. Love rarely goes according to plan. Is this really happening? Are we really doing this? We're really doing this, Kael confirmed. Assuming you still want to. I want to, Mira said. I'm scared and unsure and still healing from what Garrett did, but I want this. I want you. I want us. Then you have me. All of me. For as long as you want me. That might be a very long time. Possibly forever. Are you prepared for that level of commitment? Mira, I'm the Alpha King. I've been preparing for forever-level commitments since I was old enough to understand what a crown meant. This is the first one I've actually wanted. Mira shifted carefully to kiss him, slow and sweet and full of promise. When they broke apart, both smiling like fools, she settled back against his chest. We should probably figure out how to tell the court, she murmured. That this went from fake to real. They're going to have questions. Let them question. We'll figure it out together. Kael's arms tightened around her. Rest now. We have a long journey ahead. Mira closed her eyes, exhausted but content. She'd come to Silverpine seeking revenge, seeking validation, seeking proof that she was worth more than her rejection. What she'd found was so much better. She'd found herself. She'd found her strength. She'd found her voice. And she'd found someone who loved her not despite her flaws and her rank and her messy, complicated history, but because of all of it. The moon goddess, Mira decided as sleep pulled her under, had a strange way of fixing her mistakes. But she'd certainly fixed this one. Chapter 7: The Choice. 3 weeks had passed since the disaster and triumph at Silverpine. 3 weeks of Mira settling back into life at Shadow Peak, her injuries healing to scars that she wore with pride. 3 weeks of navigating her relationship with Kael now that it was real instead of fake. Now that I love you had been said and couldn't be taken back. 3 weeks of wondering when the other shoe would drop. It dropped on a Tuesday. Mira was in the library, a massive room filled with books that she discovered shortly after returning and had promptly claimed as her sanctuary, when Lydia found her. The Alpha King requests your presence in the throne room, Lydia said, her expression more neutral than usual, which for Lydia was concerning. Is something wrong? That's not for me to say. Please follow me. The throne room was rarely used for anything except formal occasions, coronations, pack tribunal judgments, declarations of war. Seeing it now, filled with members of the court and several alphas from neighboring packs, made Mira's stomach drop. Kael sat on the throne looking every inch the Alpha King, powerful remote, absolutely in command. When Mira entered, his expression softened slightly, but he didn't smile. Definitely concerning. Mira Ashwood, he said formally, and the use of her full name instead of just Mira sent warning bells ringing. Thank you for joining us. Your Majesty. Mira dropped into a curtsy that Clara had spent hours teaching her, playing the part of the perfect mate even though everything inside her was screaming that something was wrong. You summoned me? I did. We have matters of pack business to discuss, and as my mate, your input is valued. There was something in the way he said it, something careful and deliberate, that told Mira this wasn't really about her input at all. One of the visiting alphas stepped forward. Alpha Darius from Moonstone Pack, an older wolf with silver streaking his hair and traditional views that made Marcus look progressive. Alpha King Kael, Darius said, his voice carrying through the hall. We've come today to discuss a matter of great importance to the stability of the Eastern Territories. Specifically, the matter of your mate bond. Mira's blood ran cold. My mate bond is not up for discussion, Kael said, his voice dropping several degrees in temperature. With respect, Your Majesty, it is. When you chose an Omega as your mate, and not even your fated mate but a chosen mate, you sent shockwaves through the pack hierarchy. Many of us overlooked this choice out of respect for your position, but recent events have forced us to reconsider. Recent events? Mira asked, unable to keep quiet. Darius turned to her with barely concealed disdain. The blood challenge at Silverpine Pack. Your performance there has raised questions about whether you're fit to be queen. About whether an Omega, even one with spirit, can truly stand as equal to an Alpha King. I won that challenge. You survived it. Barely. And only because the Alpha King intervened to save you. Garrett violated the terms. Enough, Kael commanded, and both Mira and Darius fell silent. Alpha Darius, get to your point. My point, Your Majesty, is that we have a solution. A way to stabilize your position and satisfy those who question your choice of mate. Darius gestured and another wolf stepped forward, a young woman who moved with the fluid grace of high rank. She was beautiful in that classical way. Perfect features, confident bearing. Everything an Alpha King's mate should be on paper. This is Celeste, daughter of Alpha Prime Theron from the Western Territories. She's a high-ranking Alpha female, well-educated in pack politics, trained in diplomacy and combat. Her bloodline is impeccable, and more importantly, the Moon Goddess has blessed her with a fated mate bond. To you, Your Majesty. The throne room erupted in whispers. Mira felt the floor drop out from under her. That's impossible, Kael said, his voice tight. I have no fated mate. The Moon Goddess never granted me one. With respect, she did. But the bond was dormant, waiting until you came of age and strength to bear it. Darius smiled like he just won a game Mira hadn't known they were playing. Celeste felt it the moment she entered your territory. The mate pull, undeniable and sacred. She can demonstrate if you'd like. No, Kael said sharply. But Celeste was already moving closer to the throne, and even from across the room, Mira could see Kael's body react. The tension in his shoulders, the way his breath caught, the gold of his eyes flaring brighter. The mate bond. A real one. The one thing Mira couldn't compete with. You feel it too, Celeste said softly, her voice carrying a warmth that seemed genuine. I'm sorry. I know this disrupts your current arrangement. But the Moon Goddess's design can't be denied. I'm denying it, Kael ground out. I've made my choice. Mira is my mate. Mira is your chosen mate, Darius corrected. A political arrangement that, while admirable in its intent, can't override the sacred bond. The old laws are clear. When a fated mate appears, all other bonds must be dissolved. The old laws, another alpha chimed in, also state that a ruling alpha must consider the good of all packs, not just personal preference. An Omega Queen creates instability. A fated mate who's also an alpha creates strength. Mira wanted to speak, to argue, to fight this with every weapon she had. But her throat was closed, her voice trapped behind the crushing weight of understanding. She'd always known this was temporary. Had known that someone like Kael deserved better than a broken Omega with trust issues and a talent for getting into fights. She just let herself forget it. Your Majesty, Lydia spoke up, and there was something almost gentle in her voice. Perhaps we should discuss this privately? Give you time to consider all the implications. There's nothing to consider, Kael said, but Mira heard the strain in his voice. Heard the conflict. The mate bond was pulling at him. Of course it was. That's what mate bonds did. They were the moon goddess's design, sacred and unbreakable and infinitely more powerful than any choice two people made. Actually, Mira heard herself say, her voice surprisingly steady, I think a private discussion is a good idea. Your Majesty, may I speak with you? Alone. Kael's eyes met hers, and what she saw there nearly broke her. Anguish and anger and a desperate kind of pleading. Everyone out, he commanded. Now. The throne room cleared quickly, though Mira noticed Celeste lingering near the door, her expression sympathetic in a way that made everything worse. Pity from your replacement was salt in a wound that hadn't even finished forming. When they were alone, Kael was off the throne and across the room in seconds, pulling Mira into his arms. This is bullshit, he said fiercely. Complete and utter bullshit. I don't care what the moon goddess designed or what the old laws say. You're my mate. You're the one I choose. But she's the one you're bound to. Mira pulled back enough to see his face. Kael, I felt you react when she got close. The mate bond is real. I don't want it to be real. That's not how it works. You told me yourself you watched your parents saw what a fated mate bond was supposed to be. You can't just ignore this. Watch me. His hands cupped her face, thumb brushing her cheekbone in that gesture she'd come to love. I'm not giving you up. I'm not letting some cosmic matchmaking overrule what we've built. What we've built in less than 2 months? Yes. 2 months of you challenging me and making me laugh and showing me what it means to actually be partners instead of just political allies. 2 months of the most honest, real connection I've ever had. That matters more than any bond the moon goddess thinks she designed. Mira wanted to believe him, wanted to be selfish enough to hold on and fight for this. But she'd seen Garrett choose status over their bond, had watched him pick Serafina because it made political sense, and she'd judged him for it, had called him a coward, had built her entire revenge plot around proving he'd made the wrong choice. How could she do the same thing now? How could she ask Kael to reject his fated mate for her, when she'd condemned Garrett for doing exactly that? Kael, she said gently, what did you tell me about your parents? About what a fated mate bond meant? Don't. You said it was sacred, that it was souls recognizing each other, that when your mother died, your father was never the same. Mira, what if that's what you could have with Celeste? What if you're meant for that kind of bond and I'm just in the way? You're not in the way. You're everything. Right now maybe. But what about in 5 years when the mate bond with her is pulling at you every day? When you're constantly fighting against what the moon goddess designed? When you look at me and wonder what you gave up? That won't happen. You don't know that. Mira's voice broke. Garrett rejected our bond and it nearly killed me. The pain of it, the emptiness, I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But at least it was quick, like ripping off a bandage. What you're talking about is slowly suffocating a bond that's trying to form. That's torture, Kael. For both of you. I don't care. Well, I do. Tears were streaming down her face now. I care that you'd be miserable. I care that you'd be fighting against your own nature. I care that the court and the other alphas would use this against you, would undermine everything you're trying to build. And I care that I'd spend every day wondering if you regret choosing me. I would never. You don't know that. People change. Feelings change. And I can't. Her voice broke. I can't survive being rejected again. I barely survived it the first time. If I stay and you eventually realize this was a mistake, it will destroy me. Kael looked stricken. So what are you saying? I'm saying maybe the moon goddess knows something we don't. Maybe there's a reason she gave you a fated mate. And maybe I'm not supposed to stand in the way of that. No. Kael's voice was firm, almost angry. No, you don't get to make this decision for me. This is my life, my choice. And I'm making my choice, Mira interrupted. I'm choosing not to be the thing that stands between you and your fated mate. I'm choosing to walk away before this gets messy and painful and destroys what we have. What we have is worth fighting for. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, I'm an Omega with no political connections who almost got herself killed in a blood challenge 3 weeks ago. Celeste is an Alpha with impeccable bloodlines and a fated mate bond. The math isn't complicated, Kael. Since when do you care about math? You're the one who told me worth isn't about rank or status. And I meant it. But that doesn't change reality. You're the Alpha King. You need a mate who can stand beside you without causing a political crisis every time she walks into a room. That's not me. That's never going to be me. I don't want Celeste. I want you. Right now you do. But what about when the mate bond fully forms? What about when every instinct you have is screaming at you to claim her? You think willpower alone is going to overcome that? Kael had no answer for that. Exactly, Mira said softly. You know I'm right. You just don't want to admit it. If you walk away, it's not because I'm choosing Celeste over you. It's because you're choosing to give up on us. The words hit like a physical blow. That's not fair. None of this is fair. But I'm willing to fight for us anyway. Are you? Mira looked at him, really looked at him. Saw the desperation in his eyes, the love that she didn't doubt was real. Saw the future they could have if she was brave enough to reach for it. And saw the future that would crumble when the mate bond became too strong to resist. I'm fighting for you, she said quietly. Even if you can't see it. I'm fighting for your happiness, your stability, your future. And sometimes fighting for someone means knowing when to let them go. Mira, please. I need to leave. Tonight. Before this gets harder than it already is. You're not leaving. You can't order me to stay. I'm not your subject and this isn't. Her breath hitched. This isn't even a real mate bond. Not like what you could have with her. It's real to me, Kael said, and the raw pain in his voice almost broke her resolve. Everything with you has been real. The most real thing in my life. I know. That's why this hurts so much. She stood on her toes and kissed him, soft and gentle and final. A goodbye wrapped in the taste of tears and regret. When she pulled back, Kael was holding her like he was afraid she'd disappear if he let go. Don't do this, he whispered. Please. We can figure this out. Together. You'll figure it out, Mira said. You're smart and strong and capable of anything. You don't need me. I don't need you. I want you. There's a difference. And I want you to be happy. Really truly happy. The kind of happy that comes from a fated mate bond, not from fighting against one. She gently extracted herself from his arms, already mourning the loss of his warmth. Let me go, Kael. Let me go before I'm selfish enough to stay. You're not selfish. You're brave. You're always so goddamn brave. Then let my last brave act be this. She turned and walked toward the door, each step feeling like moving through quicksand. When she reached for the handle, Kael's voice stopped her. If you walk out that door, I'm not coming after you. Mira closed her eyes. I know. I mean it. If you leave now, you're making this choice. And I'll have to accept it. I'm making this choice because I love you. Because I want what's best for you, even if it's not me. You're what's best for me. No, Mira said, looking back at him one last time. She is. You just don't know it yet. She walked out before he could argue, before she could see his expression, before her courage failed and she ran back into his arms like every instinct was screaming at her to do. The hallway was empty except for Clara, who was waiting with a packed bag and tears streaming down her face. I heard, Clara said. Everyone heard. The walls aren't that thick. Of course they aren't. Mira took the bag, grateful beyond words that someone had thought ahead. Thank you. For everything. You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's mine to make. Mira walked through Shadow Peak Fortress one last time, memorizing the halls she'd learned to navigate, the rooms where she'd started to feel like maybe she belonged. She walked past the dining hall where she'd endured countless political dinners, past the library where she'd found sanctuary, past the training grounds where Kael's guards had taught her to fight. She walked past everything she was giving up, and she didn't let herself cry until she was in the carriage Clara had arranged, headed back toward Silverpine territory and the small cabin that had been her refuge once before. 3 months. That's what they'd agreed to. She'd gotten less than 2. But in those 2 months she'd found herself. She'd found her strength. She'd found love. Real, terrifying, all-consuming love. And now she was choosing to let it go. The moon goddess, Mira thought bitterly as the fortress disappeared behind her, had a cruel sense of timing. 1 week passed. Then 2. Mira settled back into her cabin, into the quiet life of an Omega on the borderlands. She tended her garden, foraged for mushrooms, tried not to think about Kael every waking moment. She failed spectacularly at that last part. News filtered through the pack. Alpha King Kael had accepted Celeste as his fated mate. The bonding ceremony would be held within the month. The court was thrilled. The traditionalists were vindicated. Everything was working out exactly as it was supposed to. Mira told herself she was happy for him. She almost believed it. On the 14th day after she'd left, someone knocked on her cabin door. Mira opened it expecting a pack messenger or maybe Clara checking on her. Instead she found Kael. He looked terrible, dark circles under his eyes, tension in every line of his body, the kind of exhausted that came from sleepless nights and impossible choices. "You look awful," Mira said, because apparently her brain-to-mouth filter had completely shut down. "You look beautiful." "I look like I've been crying for 2 weeks straight and living on mushroom soup." "Beautiful," Kael repeated. They stared at each other for a long moment. Then Mira stepped back. "You should come in. People are going to talk if they see you on my doorstep." "Let them talk. I'm done caring what people think." But he came in anyway, filling the small cabin with his presence. He looked around at the space, smaller and shabbier than ever after the grandeur of Shadow Peak, and something in his expression softened. "I remember this place," he said quietly. "This is where you saved my life. And where we made a terrible deal that blew up in both our faces." "Was it terrible?" "All of it." "No," Mira admitted. "Most of it was wonderful. That's what makes this so hard." Kael turned to face her fully. "I didn't accept the bond with Celeste." Mira's heart stuttered. "What?" "I didn't accept it. I told her, and the court and every alpha who thought they had a say in my personal life, that I don't care what the moon goddess designed or what tradition demands. You're my choice and I'm not changing my mind." "Kael, you can't just the mate bond." "Is there? Feel it. Every time Celeste is near I feel the pull." His jaw clenched. "But I also feel you. Every morning I wake up and reach for you and you're not there. Every dinner alone feels wrong. Every decision I make I find myself wondering what you'd say, how you'd challenge my assumptions, whether you'd laugh at my terrible jokes or roll your eyes and call me an arrogant alpha king. That doesn't change the facts. The facts are that I've spent 2 weeks trying to convince myself that doing the right thing and accepting Celeste would make me happy. And you know what I figured out?" "What?" "That I'd rather spend my life fighting against a mate bond one don't want than spend even one more day without the woman I love." Mira felt tears welling up. "You barely know me. I know you're brave enough to walk away from what you want, because you think it's what's best for me. I know you challenge pack hierarchy just by existing. I know you make terrible puns when you're nervous and you're brilliant at strategy games, and you hum off key when you think no one's listening." "I don't hum off key." "You absolutely do. It's adorable." He moved closer. "I know that 2 months with you has been more honest and real than years of playing the Alpha King role. And I know that if I let you go to do the responsible thing, I'll regret it for the rest of my life." "What about Celeste?" "I released her from the bond. Or rather, I refused to complete it. She was understanding, actually. Sad but understanding. She said she'd rather wait for a mate who actually wanted her than force a bond with someone in love with someone else." She sounds remarkably mature. She is. Which makes me feel worse about the whole situation, but doesn't change how I feel. Kael took Mira's hands in his. "I'm here to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly." "Okay. Do you love me?" "Yes," Mira whispered. "I love you so much it terrifies me." "Then why did you leave?" "Because I was afraid. Afraid that you'd regret choosing me. Afraid that I'd never be enough. Afraid that the mate bond with Celeste would eventually be too strong and you'd come to resent me for standing in the way of it. And now, I'm still afraid. But I'm also miserable without you. So I guess it's a question of which fear is stronger, the fear of not being enough or the fear of never trying." Kael smiled, that real smile that transformed his entire face. "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think the moon goddess isn't infallible. I think sometimes she gets it wrong, or maybe she gives us options instead of mandates. And I think the strongest bonds aren't the ones we're born with, but the ones we choose every single day." "That's very philosophical." "I've had 2 weeks to think about it." He pulled her closer. "Marry me." Mira's brain short-circuited. "What?" "Marry me. For real this time. Not a fake arrangement, not a political statement. Marry me because you love me and I love you and we're better together than apart. Kael, I can't, we can't, this is insane. I'm aware. I'm also serious. I want forever with you, Mira. I want fights about strategy and terrible puns and you wrapped around me like an octopus every morning. I want to support your crusade to reform pack hierarchy and watch you prove everyone wrong about what Omegas can do. I want all of it with you for as long as we both live. The court will lose their minds. Let them. I'm the Alpha King. They'll adapt. The other alphas will question your leadership. They already do. At least this way I'll be happy while they're questioning it. You're giving up a fated mate bond. I'm choosing the woman I love. There's a difference. Mira looked at him, really looked at him, saw the certainty in his eyes, the love that he wasn't even trying to hide, saw the future they could have if she was brave enough to reach for it. Okay, she heard herself say. Yes, I'll marry you. Kael's expression transformed into pure joy. He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around the tiny cabin until they were both dizzy and laughing. You're sure? He asked when he finally set her down. Because once I tell the court, there's no taking it back. I'm terrified and probably making another terrible decision, but yes, I'm sure. Mira cupped his face in her hands. I love you. And I'm done letting fear make my choices for me. Good. Because I have plans for us. Big plans. Reform pack hierarchy plans. Make you an official queen plans. Scandalize the entire Eastern Territories plans. Those sound like terrible plans. The best ones usually are. He kissed her then, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Mira was smiling. So what now? She asked. Now we go back to Shadow Peak and tell everyone you're going to be my queen. We weather the political storm together. We build the future we want instead of the one everyone expects. He paused. And maybe we invest in a better bed for this cabin, because if I'm going to visit you here regularly, I need something that doesn't creak every time I breathe. It adds character. It adds back pain. Mira laughed, really laughed for the first time in 2 weeks. Take me home. To Shadow Peak? To wherever you are. That's home now. They left the cabin together, hand in hand, ready to face whatever came next. The court would be scandalized. The traditionalists would be furious. The other alphas would question and challenge and resist. But they'd face it together. And that, Mira decided, was enough. More than enough. It was everything. Epilogue. 6 months later. The coronation of Queen Mira was exactly as chaotic as everyone had predicted. Half the court was scandalized. The other half was cautiously optimistic. The traditionalists had staged 3 separate protests, which Mira had graciously ignored while implementing reforms that gave Omegas voting rights in pack decisions. Garrett had sent a gift, a set of silver candlesticks with a note that read simply "Congratulations." Mira had used them as bookends and considered it symbolic of something, though she wasn't sure what. Celeste had found her own mate, a beta from the Southern Territories who adored her, and had sent her congratulations along with a beautiful tapestry for the castle. They'd become unlikely friends, bonding over the absurdity of moon goddess matchmaking and shared interests in pack reform. Elder Mora had traveled from Silverpine for the ceremony, declaring loudly that she'd known all along Mira was destined for greatness. No one contradicted her, even though they all knew she'd said no such thing. And Kael stood beside Mira through it all, proud and supportive and occasionally exasperated when she made yet another speech about equality that sent the court into fits. You know, he said one evening as they prepared for bed in their chambers, the ones with the excellent bed and the bathroom with 2 sinks, I thought my life was complicated before I met you. And now it's impossibly complicated and infinitely better. Mira smiled, wrapping her arms around him. Think we'll make it? Long term. We've survived assassination attempts, blood challenges, mate bond drama, and court politics. I think we can handle anything. Even the traditionalists' latest petition to reconsider the Omega voting rights? Even that. Though I'm tempted to make you handle that one. Your speeches tend to shut them up faster than mine. That's because I'm not afraid to call them cowards to their faces. That's my queen. Mira pulled back to look at him seriously. Do you ever regret it? Choosing me over Celeste? Over the fated mate bond? Never. Not once. Kael's expression was sincere. Do you ever regret coming back? Only on days ending in Y. At his alarmed look, she laughed. I'm kidding. Mostly. No, I don't regret it. This is hard and terrifying and nothing like what I imagined my life would be. But I wouldn't trade it for anything. Good. Because you're stuck with me now. Stuck with the Alpha King who gave up his fated mate for a rejected Omega. Truly, I'm living a fairy tale. You're living a better story than any fairy tale. You're living one you wrote yourself. And that, Mira decided as she kissed her husband and settled into bed beside him, was the truest thing anyone had ever said. She'd started as an invisible Omega, been rejected by her fated mate, saved a dying Alpha King in the woods, and somehow ended up a queen. The moon goddess had strange plans. But Mira had made her own plans, and those had turned out even better. The end. If this story resonated with you, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as crazy as this one. And you don't want to miss it.